Mode.
Good morning. Welcome to this morning's More Together webinar. For those of you who have joined us in previous sessions, welcome back. For those of you joining for the first time, we're delighted to have you here with us today, and we hope that you're healthy and well. My name is Claire Murphy, Director of Customer Success here at Great Place to Work. I'm here to facilitate our time together today and to pose any questions you have to our panel on your behalf. This session is being recorded, and the recording and slides will be sent to all attendees within 48 hours. Please feel free to chat your questions into the chat box on the right at any time. We have a big audience today, and we'll do our best to answer all questions either today or in content in the coming weeks. Our panel today is three of our most senior leaders: Michael Bush, our CEO, Holly Petroff, EVP Global Strategic Accounts, and Tony Bond, our EVP Chief Diversity and Innovation Officer. Tony's going to introduce today's topic and set the stage for what I know will be a great session. Tony, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Welcome, everyone. We're glad that you're here with us this Friday. First and foremost, we hope that you're all doing well, you and your families. We know that it's really challenging times, so our best goes out to everyone. Today, we're going to explore one of the most important topics, I believe, in this whole scenario that we're dealing with, and that's well-being. It's something that's hitting all of us, and we have to be comfortable talking about it. And so we hope that you'll leave with some ideas of how you can not only make sure that you're taking care of the well-being of all your employees, but also yourselves. So to get us started, we always like to sort of ground us in the purpose of these webinars, the inspiration behind it. This is our mission. We believe that you all are as much part of this mission as we are. We know that today, employees are leaning into their organizations for answers like no other time before. And so we have over 30 years of work in the space of learning about the employee experience. It includes 98 different countries, includes 2 different recessions. So hopefully from that experience, we can share some insights with you that no matter where you are on the journey right now, it's going to help you make some better decisions. And so that's our goal, and that's the aspiration behind what we're trying to do. It's an unbelievable crisis. We're all in this together. We named it Better Together because we know that none of us have all the answers. It takes a community to really approach some of the situations we're dealing with. And so with that, we are in constant prototyping and rapid prototyping of what we can bring back to you that will make your experience even better. And so continue to send us questions even after the webinar is over with. That'll help us do that. This diagram just kind of shares where we are. So we were somewhere in our journey pre-COVID. Our experience was totally different than they are today. And now we're finding ourselves, we don't know where the decline and where the stabilization will occur. But if you look at the far right side, the colored part really is depicting the journey that we all may be on and the recovery we may experience. And so some organizations will come out of this not at a place where they were going into it. But we believe that there's an opportunity to sort of reinvent ourselves and to come out of this even better than where we are today. So the content we're sharing with you around our research is intended to not only bring us back to a normal state, but actually reinvent it to a place where we're even better than where we were before the actual crisis occurred. So that's our hope and that's our aspiration. We also, last time, talked about some truths, some things we know to be true during the experience we're dealing with. First and foremost is we have to lead differently. This requires us to lead in a way that we're showing more empathy than we've ever shown before. We have to engage people in a way that we've never engaged people before. So it's a really true test of leadership. It's a true test of how we can build trust as leaders. We also know that we have to navigate some really tough conversations. We have to be more comfortable talking about money than ever before because we know that there's some financial crisis that everyone's dealing with. So our ability to talk about money, our ability to talk about mental health, our ability to talk about the balance between productivity and people will be really important in the conversations we have with our employees every single day. We also know that we're writing a new story about layoffs. So hopefully, majority of you haven't had to experience layoffs right now. But even if you haven't, we know employees are thinking about it every single day, wondering about their security. If some of their colleagues have been laid off, there could be some grief that they're experiencing, sort of a survivor's syndrome and grieving. And so we have to be able to talk about layoffs in a way that's going to position us to be viewed as a company that does things in a very high trust way. We can actually do these things in a way that's going to build trust long term, and it will actually not hurt our brand. We're also, big part of our conversation today, the majority of our conversation around supporting mental health. So we know people are dealing with fear. They're dealing with the loss of employees. They're dealing with the loss of loved ones. So mental health is first and foremost at the top of all our minds. And so how do we approach those things? How do we create space that we make sure we're taking care of the mental health needs of people will be vitally important. And so that's the essence of what we're here to talk about today. We also know that this crisis won't impact us all the same way. Even before the crisis, we had certain segments of our organization that had different types of experiences. We weren't experiencing it as well as others. And so some are going to be more negatively impacted than others. As a leader, we have to make sure that we're putting on a lens and fully understanding how these situations are actually going to impact different types of employees, because not all the employees will be impacted the same. So the divide now will actually be larger than it was going into the crisis. So we have to be aware of that as leaders. We also know that we're going to learn together. It's almost a test of efficacy. And so we'll learn some things through this turbulent time that'll make us better as individuals, better as leaders, and better as an organization. So can't be any more of a learning opportunity than what we've ever experienced before. This is like the ultimate opportunity for us to learn as leaders and learn as an organization. And then we also know that working from remote, while it may seem like a temporary thing, may be the way that we're going to work going into the future. It could be a competitive advantage. We have to really be able to trust our employees to get things done without being supervised in the way they have in the past. And so let's use this opportunity to really explore how can we take the virtual work environment and working from home and make that an advantage for us going into the future. And then last but not least is we will recover. While it may not seem like it today, we're here to be a part of this whole conversation to help us all recover and put us into a place where we're much better going forward. And so those are the truths that we explored the last time, and they continue to be truths. And so we want to make sure you hold on to those things as we move into this conversation around mental health. And so with that, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Holly Petroff, who's going to really start the conversation around mental health. So welcome, Holly.
Thanks, Tony. Tony just mentioned that one of our truths that we're grounding our conversations in these weekly times together, one of our truths is supporting people's mental health, that we will and that we actually must do that. And the reality is that we rarely discuss it, but mental health affects all of us, doesn't it? And it's been an issue in the work environment for a long time, whether we've been talking about it or not. The issue of mental health has existed for all of us and all of our people. But because of the circumstances that we're in today, if it wasn't already on the top of your list, it needs to be. We got to move it there. And it's far likely that it'll stay at the top of the list for a while. Even as we begin to re-enter the workplace, we're going to have to be thinking about, and as Tony described, being comfortable talking about mental health at work. So as leaders, this is actually where our attention and our energy needs to be with our people, and we need to be okay with that. There was a recent study the Kaiser Family Foundation conducted, and if you didn't get a chance to read it, it's worth a read for sure. And in the survey results, it was just conducted a couple of weeks ago, they found that almost 1 out of 2 adults is experiencing some type of mental health issue as a result of the pandemic. And that actually 1 out of 5 said it's having a significant impact on their mental health. And when I first looked at the study, I thought, 1 out of 2, wow, 50%, that's really high. But actually, as I thought about it, only 1 out of 2 people is feeling some kind of impact on their mental health in light of the global circumstances we're all in. Actually, the numbers feel low to me. And it started to make me wonder whether we've so deeply buried the topic of our mental health that we don't even know when something as significant as this is actually taking a toll on us. And some of you know it. you get it already. You're already seeing the effects of the crisis, how it might be happening on you, or maybe on the people that you work with. Our people's mental health is absolutely 100% impacted by this crisis. For those of you that are in an essential service, you know this to be true, because every day you and your people are putting yourselves at risk. And as a result of that, perhaps your families and your loved ones too. And I know that some of you have also experienced someone you love being impacted by this terrible disease. And those are pretty obvious ways that our mental health is impacted. But that story is not true for all of us. Maybe your story is different. Maybe you're not in those circumstances. So when somebody says to you, "How you doing?" you kind of brush it off a little bit. And you say, "Well, in light of everything else, I'm great. I'm healthy, my family's healthy, I got a job. So who am I to complain?" Because I know a lot of people who aren't in the same circumstances. And God bless you if that's your situation. You should be grateful for it. And yet, dismissing your own feelings is unhealthy too. And it's not good for our mental health to minimize our experiences simply because someone else might not be in the same circumstance we're in. So think about it. And some of us are parents. Maybe you're worried about your children, or you have an older parent who's either flouting the rules that have been put in place, or just because of their age, you know they're more at risk of serious complications in the event that they were to get sick. Or maybe you're someone who's nearing retirement and you're wondering whether your 401k can recover. Or you've seen someone around you lose their job and you're wondering, maybe you're going to lose yours. Maybe you live in a hotspot like me, and just leaving your house feels scary. Grocery shopping becomes an event you never dreamed it would be before. Or maybe it isn't that big of a deal, and maybe you just live in an area where getting groceries isn't easy, if not totally unsafe. But even if nothing I just described applies to your experience, we're all human beings living in what I would describe as really unimaginable times. And I think we all share the experience of wondering when it's going to end and whether life will ever be normal again. So that's a shared experience we all have. And whether your experience is the big one, that's the obvious one that can impact your mental health, or whether it's small and maybe less noticeable, they all actually take a toll on us. And there's only so much that our brains can manage. Think about it. Have you been feeling tired lately? Maybe tired more than normal, or maybe you're not quite sleeping well, but you can't pinpoint why. Or maybe you're like me and you just never know what day of the week it is. For those of you who are unsure, I checked and today's Friday. These are all actually small signs our body is trying to tell us that we need to tend to our mental health. And when we don't take care of ourselves, all the research shows it actually impacts a lot. It can break down our bodies, it can cause us to be sick, it can contribute to burnout, and it can even contribute to poor decision making. As leaders, I think that's especially important to be thinking about how we show up for our people. And yet, some of us tend to dismiss those things. I am absolutely one of those people, or maybe I should say that I was one of those people. I mentioned that I live in a hotspot here, and so I've been kind of stuck at home for the last 30 or more days. And that first week of stay-at-home orders, my husband was starting to take naps in the middle of the day. This is a guy who is full of energy and focus. He gets stuff done. I can't keep up with him. And here he was taking a nap in the middle of the workday. And then when I was cooking dinner, he was asleep in a chair. And he was going to bed really early. And I really started to tease him for it. Hey, pull it together, honey. What's going on? And then the weekend came when I didn't have the distraction of a full calendar with back-to-back meetings. And I was the one that hit the wall. And I couldn't keep my eyes open. And I couldn't get done half of the things that I had on my to-do list over the weekend. It all went right out the window. And it was in that moment, well, kind of after I took the nap at 12 o'clock on a Saturday, where I realized that I needed to do a better job, that we needed to do a better job of supporting our mental health. We didn't even know it was happening, but it was our body's way of telling us we needed to act differently. And so the stresses that we experience today are going to look differently in 60 to 90 days. Hopefully, many of us will be preparing for reentry into our workplaces. And so the new stresses will look a little bit differently, but they'll still be stress on our mental health and our well-being. We'll be asking ourselves questions like, well, how does our employer know that it's safe for us to go back to work? Who's cleaning all the surfaces? How will I know if they got every doorknob, every light switch, every elevator button? How are we going to make sure that we're social distancing when we get back to work? Because that seems to be working. And maybe the big question that I think many of us are asking ourselves already, thinking about the future, is, well, what if I'm actually at more risk of getting sick just by going back to the workplace? It's hard to hold all these stresses. Even with support, it's hard to hold all these stresses, and these are real. It's even harder if you're in it alone. And the good news is that it doesn't actually have to be that way, and that some people are able to have a good experience at work. The words that you see on your screen are words that actual employees use to describe how they're feeling at work right now. This survey was not taken pre-COVID. It was taken last week. And in the midst of all this craziness, these people said they were proud and thankful and they feel safe. So when I was looking at the data, I said, this is people who normally work in an office and now they're working from home. No. These are comments from healthcare workers in a trauma center. This is their experience right now in the current state. Think about what they're dealing with every day. But they're able to have a great experience. It doesn't mean that they're not also anxious and scared and dismayed and maybe even totally discouraged on days. Both can actually be true, can it? That we can be overwhelmed with the world around us or even overwhelmed with the work at hand, which no doubt they are, given what they've been called upon to do every day, and yet they can also say that they feel a sense of pride, a sense of family, that they feel safe and cared for. And the reason why their people are able to say that in these circumstances, think about the circumstances that they're in every day, they're able to do that because their leaders are doing everything they can to tend to their people with empathy and with compassion and care. So they're not just ensuring their physical needs are met, but their leaders are ensuring that their emotional needs are met too. And one of the ways that they're doing that is they're actually listening for opportunities to help take the pressure off. They're listening for ways to help. So that's how they're working it in their organization. What about the rest of us? What can we do? First, if this is not something you're talking about at work today, start. We have to acknowledge that people's mental health, our people's mental health, is a responsibility of leadership. It is my responsibility as a leader at Great Place to Work to ensure that I am supporting the mental health of our people. It's your responsibility too. And so we have to address it. It's not whether we address it. It's not whether we should start having a conversation because it seems to be something important. We must address it. The real question at hand is not whether, but how. How we're going to address it that's going to make the difference. Tony talked earlier about differences and how people experience the work environment in general, but especially during times of change and uncertainty. And we've talked about how important it is to ensure that no one is left behind. Well, everybody's different. Everybody has different needs. Everybody's in different circumstances. And so supporting people's mental health requires us as leaders to extend a new level of flexibility, a deeper level of compassion. And we have to customize our approaches, not for groups of people, but for individuals. The best place to do that is to start with your one-on-one connections with people. It's how we build relationships. It's how we get to know people inside and outside of work. And when you build those connections and you take the time to get to know people, you'll actually know what they need. I mean, how can you respond in a customized way to meet someone's need if you're not listening and you're not getting to know them? You're not taking the time to learn about what's important to them. So it requires all of us as leaders to carve out space, maybe more space than we're doing today, to have a conversation, to ask people how they're feeling. 15 years ago, if somebody said to me, you're going to be talking about feelings at work someday, I would have rolled my eyes and said, yeah, right. Maybe some of you are hearing me use the word feelings, and you're saying that would send people running for the hills in my company. Maybe not. Maybe you're just thinking it's a little bit more of an intimate level that feels maybe not so comfortable for you at work, a little less professional than you're used to. And I know some of you are introverts, and so that sometimes makes these one-on-one connections feel a little bit more awkward for us, or we stumble a little bit in those one-on-one connections. So sometimes it's a little bit easier to avoid them. I also know that some of you live for these personal connections. It's where you get your energy and your fuel and you thrive in this space, but that you also may work with some people that are challenged by connecting in that way. Well, the good news is that I'm confident every one of us can do this, that every leader has the ability to show a level of care and create a personal connection with people. I know it's possible because when we were all little, we did this on the playground. We intimately shared this level of care for each other. We didn't need a training course. We didn't need 6 months of leadership development. We didn't need an executive coach to tell us to be nice. We saw somebody in need, we helped them up, we showed them we cared, we asked them if they were okay. And that's what our people are asking of us right now. People aren't expecting us to do this perfectly. In fact, the more perfect we are, sometimes the less genuine it feels. So sometimes people don't even want perfection. We place that weight of expectation on ourselves. But we do know they need our empathy, and they need our care now more than ever before, even if it's a little bit uncomfortable, even if it's a little bit awkward and we stumble. Maybe it's uncomfortable for them. That's okay too. We got to get out of our own way. But we have to know that we're capable of doing it, that it's already within us, because we used to do it when we were on the playground as kids. Just like some people are comfortable to make those personal connections and talk about how they're feeling, some people are really comfortable asking for help, talking about their experiences, but we all know people that aren't. And our jobs as leaders is to know the difference and to meet people where they are. How do you help the people who aren't asking for help? You know who those people are. They're your helpers. They're the ones that are so busy focused on everybody else, they don't stop to think about taking care of themselves. Or honestly, they might feel even a little bit guilty to ask for help. These are the people that when you say, hey, how are you? The answer is always, fine, I'm great. Is there anything we can do to help you? No, I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for asking. On a good day, that may be fine. But in these days, we got to dig deeper. And as leaders, we have to make it easier to help these people and figure out what they need. Create the conditions for them to feel safe enough to reveal their situation to you, because they're so used to listening to everyone else. We got to make it easy for them to communicate with us. So one of the ways to do that is to use inquiry with prompting. So instead of asking general questions like, how are you? What do you need? How can we help? Instead, get more specific so that they can respond to something in your question. So something like, do you have people in your family or your community that you're concerned about? How might we be able to help them? Asking them something about supplies. How's your supply of toilet paper, hand sanitizer? Do you have enough face masks in your household right now? Would it be helpful to you if we shipped you some? See, this gives them something to react to. So even people who might never say, hey, I actually can't get some of the supplies I need, can you help? Will be more likely to agree to your help or accept your help if you've offered it in this way. They also might say, I don't need any of those things, but because you've created the safety of the exchange, it'll open up the opportunity for them to say what they do need and communicate those needs to you too. Something that I've experienced that's really important for people is creating space at the top of meetings to check in, helping people clear their minds a bit. There's a lot of research about this, that if someone is carrying an anxiety, a stress, or a weight of some kind, if we have the space to actually give voice to it, our minds are better able to set aside that concern, even if just for a bit, to focus on something else. And so creating that space at the top of meetings right now, when we all know that we're carrying so much, helps us give voice to the situation and set it aside, even if it's just for a little bit. If you're not holding that space right now and you're moving right through the agenda, know that that doesn't actually mean you're in a productive meeting. It just means that you may have plowed over the very roadblock that's standing in the way of our people giving their most. I used to do this a lot, and I probably do it sometimes now. We've got to be aware of this, that creating that space for people to communicate what's on their hearts and minds enables them to contribute to the business. It unlocks them to be able to contribute at a different level than if they're holding on to something in their hearts and minds while we're checking something off a list in a meeting. Another really important part of it then is to make it actually safe for people to say that they're not okay. If you live here in the United States, and actually in many countries around the world, Just saying, I'm not okay is a really big step, isn't it? When was the last time you said that? It takes a huge extension of trust to be able to say, I'm not okay. There's a level of vulnerability in that. Then the reality is that it's not really all that acceptable. So our job as leaders is to create the safety for people to say, hey, I'm not okay. Even if we simply role model it by saying, hey, I'm feeling really tired, or I need to take a break, or maybe saying, hey, I need to be a little bit late to this meeting because I got to just take a walk around the house. Whatever that thing is, let people know that you're attending to your mental health so that they know it's actually okay to tend to theirs. Yeah. By the way, if you're not actually taking care of yourself, if you're plowing through like my husband and I did the first week of all this, you're not going to have the energy to take care of the people around you. There's a reason why they tell you to put that oxygen mask on first before helping the people around you. And so ask yourself, when was the last time you stepped away from your computer, ended a meeting a little bit late to make sure that you were getting a glass of water, just lifting your eyes up for a moment? Those small actions actually make a really big difference in how we're tending to our mental health. There are big things you can do too, but start with the small ones because it helps us take good care of ourselves so that we can be present for the people that we care about. I'm enjoying these word clouds today. Here's another one from an organization who just surveyed. They just surveyed 2 weeks ago. Again, in the midst of COVID-19. They said, we want to know what our people are experiencing. We got to know what reality is for our people right now. The words that you're looking at were expressed by people who work at another essential business. They're from DHL Express. DHL is an extraordinary organization, number 4 on our world's best list. They actually just made our best workplaces in Asia list last week. They've got hundreds of thousand employees in over 200 countries, and they know how to connect with their people one-on-one. They know how to take care of the mental health of their people. And so you can imagine that because they're in an essential service right now, they've got a long list of new practices in addition to the existing safety practices to make sure that the physical safety of their people is first. Doing all the things that you would expect them to do and so much more. But they've also implemented a bunch of practices related to mental health, realizing that it is critically important that the organization is in a position to support the mental health of their people as they work on the front line right now. Some of the things that they're doing are regular video messages to encourage people, to show them that they care. Also just getting information into their hands because they're focused on getting the work done. So sharing information about what's happening in the business or what the leadership is doing to ensure that their people are safe. So they can have confidence when they step out of that truck and they deliver that package that they're not at risk. And the people who do the deliveries all have scanners. You've probably seen them if you've gotten a package before. And so they've leveraged existing technology with these scanners to deliver messages to their people. So at the start of every week, every Monday, every worker gets an inspirational message. It's a motivational message to keep people's spirits high and let them know that their leadership sees them and values the work that they're doing as they're helping people and the world continue. Every Friday, they get a message on the scanner too. And that's looking back on the week, thanking them for keeping the world moving. They're hosting some great virtual yoga sessions. They're doing facilitated meditations together. It's open to employees during and after work hours and also to their families. And these are some of the ways that DHL Express is ensuring the mental health of their people is cared for. And even with all of this, in the survey results, people asked for more time one-on-one with their managers, more connections to connect. So leaders responded. They opened up their calendars, they created more space for check-ins, knowing how important it is to just be present with each other. And they also created a program called the Mental First Aider Program, which helps train people on how to look out for the signs that someone's mental health might be at risk and what to do about it. It's critically important for people who are essential workers. They don't have the choice to work from home like many of us do right now. And so these are some of the many approaches that they've taken at DHL to make sure that their people feel cared for. That the organization isn't just taking care of their physical health, but also their mental health. And that leaders are talking about their responsibility to do that. And because of all of this, their people are getting it done every day. They're delivering for the business. Right now, their on-time delivery rate exceeds 99% in current state because their people are committed and they're able to give that level of commitment to the business because the business is giving that level of commitment to them. So sometimes some of you might say, oh, my company's no DHL. We're not that size. We don't have that revenue. Our margins aren't the same. You know, whatever it might be. Think about the practices that we just talked about. Really, they cost little to nothing. And it's mostly focused on behaviors, aren't they? Like listening and thanking your people and making sure they have the information they need so they feel like they've got some control in a time that feels really out of control to all of us. Showing respect for their work, for their contribution. That doesn't matter how big your company is. You can do all those things. We can all do all of these things, and we can do more. These are just examples of one company and what they've chosen to do. The bottom line is starting the conversation about our mental health is the most important thing. And now Michael's going to talk with us a bit about how we can be pushing our benefits to align with the empathy and the compassion we've been talking about too.
Thanks very much, Holly. Well done. And Marcus, we're going to move pretty quickly through here because I see these questions coming in and can't wait to get to them. So you can go to the next slide. You know, there are a lot of companies, everything Holly just said is based on our data. Not really her opinions. Her recommendations and her suggestions are coming from our data, from what people need right now as we survey around the world, especially around these targeted COVID surveys that we're doing. So it's one of those things where some companies are feeling like, oh, it's a bad time to survey. It's actually the perfect time to survey to find out what's going on with people. Next slide. So we have an organization that we recently surveyed, another one a little bit different from the one that Holly is referring to, where 80% of the workforce is hourly. So that just sets some context. Next slide. And this is what we got from the survey results. These are what people said in this very tough environment. It's also a healthcare environment where they're actually dealing with people near the end, already near the end of life, that are being affected by the virus coming through their facility. Next slide. And 80%, actually more than 80%, are saying it's a great place to work. So to me, this is a fascinating area of study, which is why we double click and we look into it. What is it that they're doing in the toughest of situations in a heavily hourly workplace environment to create a place that people are saying is almost always a great place to work? So these are some of the things that we found looking into that data and also around the world with the data that we've collected. And we say add more easy, which is really the things that you can do, as Holly mentioned, that don't cost any more. And so the first one is communication and the messaging that Holly was referring to. We have another customer from First American Financial Corp, also with the CEO doing weekly messages to all employees, division presidents doing weekly videos to all employees, making sure that the frequency is kept up so that people are consistently reminded about how important they are. They've also, at First American, let the employees know there won't be any layoffs through Q2. They've never made a statement like that before, but they know times are different right now. And when you give a message like that, hey, no layoffs through Q2, and they've never said that before, it lets people know things are uncertain. They didn't say no layoffs in Q3, so let me work hard and understand the world, you know, is a real place and things may change, but let me do my best right now. And they really appreciate getting honest communication directly from the top. We call that easy because it's communication. It's not always easy to actually do it, but it's something that you can do and it doesn't cost more money. Celebrating the wins, the things that are going well in your organization, and particularly where one person is caring for another. That provides great inspiration and a great opportunity to highlight this empathetic leader that we know is going to be needed, and we're going to talk about today as well as over the next weeks. In terms of how to make a decision, like in this healthcare organization that I am referring to in the most recent slides, they increased pay $3 an hour. Now, they did no analysis. They didn't do Excel spreadsheet analysis. They understand what time it is. They also, most of their people are working at least 70 hours a week that are hourly. In that situation, tremendous stress. they moved money out. When you looked at the open comments, people one after another said something that was amazing to me. They said, we didn't expect getting the $3 an hour. We really appreciate it. So they were grateful to get it, which meant it was the right time, and it was management not using Excel and just thinking about those people and what they were being asked to do and doing the right thing. That's generosity over policy. And then all of us have organizations or providers that we contract with around mental health benefits or things like that. You got to push them. You got to push them. This idea of somebody on our team calling for mental health support and finding out that they can get their appointment in September, that's unacceptable. So we have to push our providers to make sure they're actually doing everything they can for our people at this time. Or you're going to have a different provider next year. And then thinking about for all, one of the things I did notice going through the open comments from this one healthcare provider that's doing this tremendous work is one of the middle managers said, hey, it's great when the CEO sends that video every week to all the hourly workers, but I wish they'd mention us. So that's the thing about for all. We can't overlook anybody. We have to be thinking about all parts of our work environment. And if we're delivering inspiring messages, supportive messages, honest, transparent information, you want to make sure if you target one group, then you have to take care of everybody. So you can either do the one-to-many communication, but once you single out a certain group, you want to make sure that you're doing the same for every group so that everybody is included and everybody is touched in the same way. The next slide. So this idea, kind of where we're heading, which is the reentry, the movement from many of our people back to work, the new normal, which is already happening. You know, our teams in China are back in the office. Our teams in Denmark and Norway are going back on Monday. So this is beginning to happen. We're all thinking about it now. How do we reenter? How do we do the social distancing? The things that Holly mentioned. Well, the data is telling us some interesting things about what we need to be thinking about for our leaders in this reentry planning. The next slide. So these are some of the things that we want to pass on to you today. That the leader, the effective for all leader for reentry, number one, has empathy. This is the ability to listen and feel and experience that maybe they haven't had. You know, you may not have kids, but you want to listen in a way to people that do have kids and therefore know that this reentry without summer school and without summer camps is going to be quite a challenge. So we say that one to many, like what I'm doing right now in a communication, one to a lot of people, we have to move to one. So the effective leaders are going to have to be able to talk to employees one-on-one, particularly frontline supervisors and middle and mid-level managers, and make a decision that is not a decision that will affect everyone. And it may deviate from the HR policies because a person has a specific need that they didn't have 2 months ago. So we're going to have to find a way to support our supervisors and our middle managers to make decisions in real time, intelligent risk taking, not worried about precedent, and think about the person. What can I do for this person? Not all the people. What can I do? It's going to be a series of one-on-one decisions, and where they need help and guidance, HR's responsibility is to help them make this decision very, very quickly. A person who is supposed to go back to the office on Monday but has no childcare, if they do that, can't come on Monday. So what can you do for them? And how does that supervisor make a decision very quickly without waiting for lots of debate and a new policy for all? It's going to have to be policy for one rather than policy for all. So that's what we mean by fast action and customized flexibility. Next slide. Yeah. So I think that's it. In our next webinars, we're going to start to bring in guest speakers. We'll be highlighting that at the end of today. Really companies who have been working through this and most importantly are getting ready for the reentry, the new normal at work, and how we support people individually as they transition back to work. Final thought is it's a lot easier to work from home than it is to home from work, which is what I've actually been doing. Some of you might have seen earlier my wife came in and I hit the mute button. I said, "Hey, honey, I got a bunch of people on this webinar." She was like, "So?" And then she walked out. It's going to be a little tense here. I think I'm just going to be in this office today. I won't be heading out for coffee. I'm just going to stay right here and keep it right here. So, you know, this thing of homing from work is challenging for all of us, but we're all getting through it. So we'll open things up now for questions.
Okay, great. Thanks, Michael, Holly, Tony. Yeah, so we've questions coming in. Please feel free to keep your questions coming. We've about 15 minutes-ish for our questions. So we're going to start with a few personal questions and then moving out into the more company organization-wide ones. So thinking about the policy for one, and the things that are really impacting people. Holly, you spoke earlier about you know, giving people space to talk about their feelings, etc. What if you try to talk to somebody about their feelings and they say they just want to focus on work? So the question is, like, how can I tell when it's better to back off versus to keep asking somebody?
I wish I had a perfect answer for whoever asked the question. I would say know the person you're talking to. If you don't know the person you're talking to, you can't push an intimate conversation, right? Because there's a wall there. So if that person knows someone else and trusts someone else, connect them with that person. Somehow you got to figure out how to help that person. You've got to figure out what the need is. If the relationship that you have with that person today isn't the right one to uncover that need, then make sure you find someone else who does have that relationship.
Great, thank you. And then Tony, I'm going to pose this question to you because I know we had a brief period of time where we had a reporting relationship, and you were one of the first people I met coming into a Great Place to Work. So I've personally had an experience like this with you in its period of uncertainty, and I'd really love to give others the opportunity to hear about it. So somebody had asked, you know, where somebody is crying or angry or acting strangely in a one-to-one, and you know, where it's, you know, somebody's expressing how it's confusing as a leader, you know, in terms of what to do next, where somebody's having that experience. Is there a limit on how much space that they should allow, or how would you suggest that they may address that with that person?
So how much space to give the employee if they're in an emotional state? I take that's your question. It's a really good question. So I think it sort of ties back to Holly. I think you don't want to push things. You need to be sort of uncomfortable, or being able to be uncomfortable as a leader to actually be in that space. And so you don't want to cut it off. You want to make sure the employee has an opportunity to express themselves. But if you're trying to get them to share and they're really not at a place where they can do that, I think the best you can do is just make sure they know there's always an open invitation for them to do that. You're there when they're ready, and not push it too far. I think the timing will work itself out. And so if you can give them other options like Holly mentioned, I think that's great. And also you just want to make sure they know that you have an open invitation. When the time is right, they'll come to you. But I think you just need to allow that space, that uncomfortable interaction to happen, and just make sure they know that you're there to support them and not push it.
Great, thank you. Michael, following up from that, so the policy for one, you know, is a really great idea. Do you have any ideas on how to make guidelines to empower managers to make those decisions quickly, or is it really just about using your best judgment?
I think it's about using your best judgment, and I think from the top of the organization, this needs to be stressed and talked about a lot. From the top, supervisors need to hear from the top that we need you to do this. We're going to support you in doing this. There's no roadmap for doing it. We can't come up with policies and procedures now on how to do it. So we're trusting you to be able to listen and hear what that person needs to get back to work, and do your best to try and make that happen. When you need some help, get to your people manager fast. We're going to try and respond to you within 24 hours so you can get a solution to that person. So it's going to be kind of chaotic, a lot of people doing what they will do, which is the right thing. as long as they know they can do that, and there's not going to be a consequence if they say, well, you can work on Monday from 8 to 12 and then go back home. They're not going to get penalized. For what do you mean they can go back home? You're going to have to support this and get feedback and make it safe for frontline supervisors and managers. For executives, this isn't hard at all. The challenge is going to be frontline supervisors and mid-level managers who don't have the flexibility in the way that they work. They have a productivity mandate that's usually theirs. That's where it's going to be hard. And these are the people that need to hear from the top that we understand, we get it, do the best you can. And on the earlier question, the best way to hear what a person needs is to use silence. It's to ask a question, some prompts like Holly said, and be comfortable with silence. The silence works magic. 15 seconds of silence feels weird, and there's some people who just have to fill it, with something, but just let the silence happen, and then the person will say, I've got a sick dog at home, and I just got to let you know, I can't bring somebody in my home right now, and this is my problem. If you give them some silence, they'll come forward with it. Otherwise, they will somehow, they've led a life of not revealing things about themselves. They're going to let that rule the day. But if they know that you need to know, because, hey, you want them to get back to work, and you want them to get back to work feeling great about getting back to work. So you need to know whatever you can to try and help them solve that problem. And they're getting a message from you that the company wants to help them solve that problem. The company's not like, yeah, well, it's only a dog. That's not what the company believes in. The company believes in the person and doing whatever they can to make the person feel emotionally safe.
Great, thank you. I think it probably related to that. Where you know the employee, so Holly, you said earlier about knowing the person, or speaking to somebody who does. And so as a leader, where you know your people, or you're getting intel to tell you that there are people that needs to take some time for themselves. How, I suppose, starting with yourself, and then Tony or Michael, if there's anything you want to add, but Holly, if you believe that somebody really needs to take some time off, how would you approach that with somebody?
Meaning that you are seeing signs in that person that suggest that stepping away might be good for them?
Yes.
Like kind of the heart of the question. I think it's okay to tell someone that you think it'd be good for them to take better care of themselves right now, and that you're going to support them in doing that. I've actually had that experience myself. Michael's done it with me. Holly, I think you need to step back. I think you need to take a few days off. I think you need to say no to that meeting. Right now, prioritize yourself, prioritize your health. And I think that if that's the kind of relationship that you can build with people, then it makes it more likely for people to realize themselves that we need to step away. In the absence of knowing it's okay, many of us are just going to keep plowing forward because that's what we think we're expected to do, or we're kind of wired to do it that way. So you need somebody to come along the side and say, hey, you don't quite seem like yourself. Hey, you're kind of not feeling like the person I know. How are you? And if the person just keeps going, then there's a time to say, maybe it'd be good, why don't you just take the afternoon off? What do you got cooking this afternoon? How can we help you get it done so that you can go walk away? And it sends a message of tremendous care, because it tells the person that they are the priority, that we can figure out the work, but that person's health is the priority. And that actually helps the person over time. It certainly helped me over time establish better habits and behaviors myself, because it became really clear that actually was what it was expected of me. And now I can then model that behavior for others.
Great. Tony, Michael, anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I think that was perfect. How does that go? I mean, showing that you care, and their well-being is first and foremost the most important thing. And you're noticing some things like Holly mentioned, and just giving them some space to address that. So nothing to add. That's perfect.
Thank you. Michael, I think this speaks to something you'd said earlier, which is, for frontline leaders, frontline managers, there's a number of questions coming in from companies who seem to have people where they're essential services, like maintenance technicians, operators, etc. the theme seems to be around how do you support people who are potentially scared to go and do their job. So where do you strike the balance between, you know, the job, we're here because we have to get the job done, and how do you take care of those people, you know, in those moments? I'd imagine it's particularly pertinent for healthcare as well right now.
Well, I think, you know, that there's two groups of people. One are the group of people who are doing that now. So it's already happening. It's already happening, and so it's all the things we've been talking about around listening, around pushing your benefits, around making sure they have the supplies that they need to be safe, making sure there's an open way of connecting with them on a frequent basis to find out if they're feeling safe, and so on. So these are the things. Companies are doing a pretty good job of this. Our data is showing, well, maybe it's the companies that work with Great Place to Work, but that companies are doing a pretty good job of this. As we look to go back to work, and so there are people who are about to begin something where they're feeling a little unsure. This is where I'm sure everybody on the line right now is already planning for that. They're already thinking about each job, each person, the commute time, the responsibilities that they're leaving at home, the commute time back home, and the environment, and making sure people have physical space, making sure hallways, there's not a whole lot of passing in hallways, making sure that conference, you know, there will be people in physical spaces who, instead of meeting in a conference room, will sit at their workstation and do it this way for a while. That's the way to make people feel safe as we move back into this new normal. Well, a great thing to do right now is be getting teams of your people to help you architect that right now. Hey, as you know, we don't know when we're heading back, but we think it's sometime in June or sometime in July, depending on where you are in the world. What concerns do you have? And can 10 of you get together and have a call, you know, using video, and talk about the things you're worried about, and give us some ideas on you know, what we can do to make sure you're going to feel safe. What are you most worried about, and what can we do about that? Some will say childcare. That's the thing for me. If you know, I'll take care of my own wipes and face masks, but if you can help me with the childcare, you know, it's going to just take care of me. People should be getting those things going now. That is the HR team's role, is to be agile and create right now, and to involve, so that people feel, number one, heard, and that they can participate, and there won't be assumptions made about what it is that they're going to need. So go directly to the people and start that work right now. I'm sure most of you have done that already.
Great, thank you. Michael, while we're with you, you know, as you talked about, you know, what's happening right now, and, you know, people are doing this right now. Like, why is it that in this time of uncertainty and unscripted rules that companies seem to be making the right decisions for their people?
I think, number one, Great Place to Work, we collect great companies full of great people. I think people who are treating their people horrible, we don't meet them too often. Those aren't our inbound leads, okay? It's kind of the people who come here, they're like, you know what, maybe there's something to this idea about people first, which is what we're talking about. You know, the role of the supervisor now is going to be a problem solver, an immediate, instant problem solver around how do I make this person feel comfortable? That's the problem. And they're going to immediately have to solve it. They aren't going to have to be able to go to a handbook or policies. They're going to have to immediately do it. And so when you've got high trust companies full of good people, which everybody on this line, I believe, does, that's going to be easier than when you don't. So we also have a belief that you know, a great place to work, the thing that connects us all, is we know it's about putting people first. Being a great place to work for all means that you don't say things like people are your greatest asset unless you mean it. So while we all do analysis, we all are running scenarios now, our best case, middle case, worst case. Most of us are doing worst case. Of course, we're doing the mathematics related to business. We have to do those things. But the most complicated decisions, and certainly the ones facing us now and what we've been facing the past 60 days, and the ones to come over the next 90 days, Excel can't help. It can't help us at all. It's going to be people first. And so when somebody decides, I'm running a skilled nursing facility, already razor thin margins, already hard to find people to do this work, and I'm going to pay them more $3 an hour, which erases my margin completely, you're only doing that when you're people first. It's economics don't make any sense. You can't, okay, post COVID, I'm taking that money back. It doesn't work. So you're only doing it because you're thinking of the person. You're like, look, this person's really coming in doing this risky work, and they're doing it in a great way. Look at those survey results. And by the way, that business I'm referring to, their patient and family scores are exceptionally great. People cannot believe the care that their members of their family are getting during this difficult time. It's a perfect example, but you only do the right thing when you're people first. So we're fortunate, to be in a business around great companies like the ones, who are participating in the webinar and participate with Great Place to Work. And we have the data to show, as we pointed out in most of the webinars, companies that behave this way outperform those that don't. If you've got a monopoly, you can treat people like dirt for a long time. But if you don't have monopoly power, sooner or later, the business model will weaken because of how people were treated. And so for those of us who are running businesses that aren't monopolies, we know this is the best way to make sure that our business outperforms everyone else. It's the simple decision, which is going to be a series of a lot more of one-on-one decisions, letting people know you care. And 10 years from now, people will never forget it. They won't forget what we're doing for them now. This thing, we joke about toilet paper, but it's a serious thing. It's just funny to joke about. So why not tell jokes about it? But it's a serious thing. And one thing every company can do is make sure their people have enough toilet paper. If you want to pick what's the takeaway? Let's get our people toilet paper. Okay, and the way to get people toilet paper is to order it from 1 to 5 a.m. on Amazon in your time zone. That's the time, that's the open window to go get it. Go get it, repackage it, get it to your people. You do that, people will be telling stories about how great their company is for the next couple of years, that they took care of this one basic need. And here's the other thing. All of us right now have a little extra capacity. Unless you're in a business, where you've had to furlough and lay off a lot of people, we do have capacity. You can put together a toilet paper squad that's going to go and get toilet paper and deliver it to our people, a couple of weeks from now. They'll really appreciate it. There's no company that can't be doing this because we do have a little capacity in our workforce right now, unless we've been hit by hospitality, airlines, or some of those areas that have been viciously hit. The rest of us have the capacity to do this. And yes, if you're wondering, at Great Place to Work, we are delivering toilet paper to our people.
I think that answers the question we usually ask, which is what would you recommend people do this week? So we can skip straight to the end. So we're 2 minutes from time. So I just want to
Survey says deliver toilet paper.
That's a tweet already. So I just want to thank our panelists today, Tony Bond, Holly Petroff, and of course, Michael Bush. Today's recordings and summary will be coming to you in the next 48 hours, so early next week either. To get our webinar continues every Friday at 9:30 Pacific, and we'll have new content and discussion. We're really excited that on May 1st, we have Margaret Keane, who's the CEO of Synchrony, with us. She's going to be talking, and that webinar is focused on the re-entry to work and the new normal. Check out our Better Together landing page for what we're seeing and learning, and send us your thoughts, as always, to michael_bush@greatplacetowork.com. And we didn't get to all the questions. We'll answer them all individually. If you didn't hear your question in the session, you will hear from us. And thank you all for joining us today. Thank you to our team in the background for curating the questions. We hope you have a lovely weekend and a safe week ahead. Stay well, stay healthy. Take care.